Number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Good morning. It is so good to see you. It's so good to see this room beginning to fill up again with people. I just want to say, and you've often heard me say this many times from this pulpit, when I say thank you for the gift of your presence. And sometimes I think you might not get it when I say thank you for the gift of your presence. You think I'm just being nice and pleasant. But in fact, I'm quite serious. The gift of your presence is a gift to the rest of the community. Whether this is the first time you've walked through these doors or you pass through them 1,000 times, your presence here today is a gift. In you, we behold the miracle of a unique and precious life, and we were mutually grateful to one another for the gifts of our presences, which we can't have without, we have to have people here to have a vital community. So I'm so grateful to see all of you, the gifts of your presence. I'm grateful to all of you who are sitting out there in the congregation, but I'm also grateful to those behind the scenes who make the services possible. And today I'm especially thinking of our musicians. We couldn't do a service without our lovely pianist, our wonderful pianist, Lorianne Schmidt. And I wanted especially to acknowledge John Schinberg today. John has been hired as our new music director, and I couldn't be happier than to have John Schinberg on board. And so it's going to be great. I just want to welcome you into this role, John, and we want to be thinking of you. John has heart surgery tomorrow, so he's going to be laid up for a little while. So send all your love right this moment to John Schinberg. Let him feel the love. Just feel the love. This is why we are here, to feel the love and to be with one another. So thank you once again for the gift of your presences. We'll continue on with our service now.
Before we say our affirmation today, I'd like to ask Sarah to put it up on the thing above us. And if you would take a moment to read through the words carefully, to think about the meaning of this promise that we make to each other every Sunday. And now, if those words are meaningful to you, I invite you to join me in speaking them out loud. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world.
With
Each Sunday, we light 3 chalices as we begin our time together. The first is for this congregation, its members and friends, and all who have gathered here. The second is for our partner church in Siemanfalva, Transylvania, Romania, where today they are celebrating Thanksgiving Sunday. And the third is for the children and youth in the religious education area and throughout the world. May these chalice flames burn for those who seek and defend the right to free and responsible search for truth and meaning, so that each person may speak their truth and live according to their own beliefs. May they burn for those who defend the democratic process and for those who work against those who would impose their own beliefs on others. May we tend these fires with vigilance and care. Please join together to sing the flames into life.
If Molly, you help me out here. You're better at calling people up. So you do that. You do that part, and I'll do the other part. So.
Good morning.
Thanks.
Hello there. Can everybody young or young at heart please join us up front? Yeah. Good job. Everybody come on.
I'm going to
Just have a
stand over
seat.
here and tell you guys a story. But once you get up here, and why don't you bring the roses down, Janet? See all these roses we've got? We've got a lot of roses. We've got yellow roses and we've got red roses. And in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to pick out a rose to give to somebody. So, do you want to take a yellow rose or a red rose? You can think about that, and you'll be ready when it's time to take a rose, and you're going to be handing it off to somebody. So thanks for helping out. So I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a real time, that is to say, I'm telling you guys a real story, something that really happened. It was on a beautiful day in April of 1949. And a special couple had met at a dance hall earlier, and they were assembled with their guests on the banks of the McKenzie River. Anybody ever been to the McKenzie River? Isn't that a beautiful, isn't that a good place to get married? I did a wedding there once for somebody, and this couple was married by the Reverend Sid Peterman, who was a Unitarian Universalist minister in Eugene. But the fact was, the bride was not a Unitarian at the time. She had been raised in New Hampshire as a member of the Congregational Church, but she wasn't so much concerned about the kind of church it was. It was a church that preached love and hope and joy, and she loved it. And she saw that as a really good thing for you to take your family and you to come by yourself or however you can. And so she got to join a Congregational church when she was growing up, and she saw that it was a really good thing for her to come Sunday after Sunday so she could meet people. So about a year or so after this young woman got married on the banks of the McKenzie River, she was living in Salem, Oregon, and one of the founding members of this fellowship. Do you think this place always just was here? There was a time when it wasn't here at all, and there had to be people who came together and said, let's form a fellowship. And one of those people said to this woman, you ought to come join us here in Salem. And she thought that she was a Unitarian, but she wasn't, but she thought she was, and so she joined. And it was a really good thing. And so she started coming here, and she and her family started coming here, and she got married, and it was a good thing. And this woman I'm talking about, sitting close by, I'll introduce you to her second, she's been a member of this congregation longer than anybody that we know about. Some people were born here, but she joined when she grew up. And it was a good thing. It was a good thing that this acorn, we have some acorns in that, pull up an acorn there. it was a good thing that this acorn, this young woman, Jo Bateman, sitting right here, she planted herself and her family here. She was just the kind of person that you hope and pray will join a congregation. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about this, because even as she had her own wonderful 3 children, this woman, she had her own 3 children that she raised here. She also worked with the Head Start program, working with students from poor families. And then she worked as a school teacher, and her skill working with students who were having a hard time and were marginalized, that was greatly appreciated. And so she knew, this teacher, she knew that you could find the good in everyone. And she always found, how would you like to have a teacher like that? How would you like to have a teacher that was not looking for you to misbehave, but was looking and to say something good to you about yourself? That was the kind of teacher that she was. And so she joined this congregation, and she's been that kind of person here. She joined this congregation when it was a fellowship, and they didn't even have a place to meet. But it's good to meet together with other people because it helps us grow together. And she's helped people grow together for all these years. When Jo joined this congregation, it was called a fellowship, and as I was telling you, there was no building. There was no place for Unitarian Universalists in those early days. And so you had to rent space, and you had to lug. Imagine if you had a church, and every time you started your church, you had to bring all the material in Sunday after Sunday. You didn't have your own church home, but the members did that. They did that, and they stepped up, and they stepped into leadership position. And one day, you know what? Something really scary happened. At the church building over on 19th Street, we used to meet over on 19th Street, and one day they were meeting in the church, and somebody noticed that the walls were kind of bowing out. And they said, this looks funny. And so they looked, and you know what they discovered? They discovered that the church over on 19th Street, where we were meeting, was about to collapse. They said, get out of there. You can't meet there anymore until you fix it. And so Jo was one of the leaders who helped figure out how to do things and how to get it back together. And so when they finally were able to rebuild and make the church a safe place to be again, she was one of the 3 trustees that officially declared that this was going to be a safe place. Scary. Man, that was a close call. And Jo was right there figuring out how to keep things together. And when the building did come back together, she was one of the 3 trustees who declared the building safe. Not to mention her husband, Keith, who helped maintain this ground before we even built here. How many of you seen that sign outside that says Bateman Woods? Bateman Woods. That was Keith Bateman. He helped out a lot, too, around here. So, anyway, beyond helping keep things together, Jo has always been interested in making others feel cared for and welcome when they have come here through the many years. And so, even today, as she approaches her 101st birthday,
Woohoo!
she is out and about checking up on people at Capitol Manor where she lives. So this Jo Bateman, sitting right over there, you're going to get to meet her. She still cares about people and gets out there and meets them. And we were going to celebrate her 100th birthday here, but we had to call it off because of the COVID. But Jo, bless your heart, Jo, I snuck this information out of her. I told her we were doing a research project, and so I got some information out of her. But she continues to thread her way through our lives, binding us together in the spirit of love. And she has done so much for so many years, and she continues to be amongst us, always looking for ways to make us feel loved and appreciated. And so today, it is time for us, the members and friends of this congregation, to let her know how much we love and appreciate you, Jo. Jo Bateman, you are our mighty oak. Janet, would you get the mighty oak pamp thing? We started a new recognition a couple of years ago for people who have just been key, essential folks in our congregation. And Joe Bateman is our 2022 Mighty Oak. We recognize you, Joe. And let me read the plaque as it's written. This was originally initiated, and we awarded it to George and Elsa Struble for the first time. And now we are adding Joe Bateman, signed, name, and it says, Unitarian Universalist Congregation gives thanks for your loving care and enduring generosity. You will live in our memory as Mighty Oaks. And your name is there, Joe Bateman, 2022. And so I invite us. We'll hang this on the wall, and you may have noticed the Mighty Oak artwork out in the foyer, and now we're going to have the plaque under it. And now you'll know why we put that up there to begin with. So I'd like to invite the children now. If you would come, maybe you could hand out a rose or let them decide which rose they want, and then give it over to Joe, and we can put it in that other vase.
Okay. Joey, would you like to start? Pick a rose.
And if you play some light music, Lorianne, just tickle the ivory through this while they're giving her the roses. That would be great.
Who would like a red one?
We did it.
All right.
Now, congratulations, Joe. We love you. We love you so much. We gave all our children, our young people, an acorn to take with them to remind them that they are going to be mighty oaks someday. They're going to grow, they're going to plant themselves, and they're going to do beautiful things. So thank you.
Okay, can everybody in the center please join together for the love arch? Okay, kids.
Take a deep breath. And we are so grateful. Joe and Libby and Doug are here now, her children. Settle in and take a deep breath. And be in this present moment. in the spirit of peace, and find your inner peace. Someday, next week, be out where you can see people and look at them with the recognition that all of them, without exception, are suffering in one way or another, even if you cannot see it. They are suffering because we all suffer the same losses, the same sorrows. We have similar yearnings and hopes and dreams and fears. All of us are alike. Let us remember to regard others through the lenses of compassion. And perhaps as you're looking at other people, say to yourself, compassion for all beings. Compassion for all beings. Those who are ill and in pain, those who are experiencing sorrow, those who are in the prison cells and the hospital beds, the orphanages, all those who are lonely. Let our compassion spread out all over, everywhere that we can send it. And as we think to ourselves these compassionate thoughts for other people, it becomes a practice. It becomes a practice. Compassion for all beings. We say it again and again. Compassion for all beings. For compassion is our way. And gratitude. If you expect nothing, then everything is a gift. If you look at each thing in life as a gift, a glass of water, a piece of bread, a hug, sunshine, rain, it's all a gift. It's all a gift. We are a gift to one another. Life is a gift to us. Let us lift our hearts in gratitude, for gratitude is the path of joy and happiness and fulfillment. Compassion and gratitude, we remember these both, for they lead us on our paths. May it be so.
Good morning, I'm Jean Logan. I am a Lifeline Slave Minister, and I am here to share with you what some of our people have shared with me so that we can all work together to help each other and celebrate. Iris C. says she is happy to report successful recovery from cancer surgery and also passing her 90th birthday. Yay. Deanna says, a long chapter has ended for me. I am so thankful for new beginnings. Yes. And Kathy Subert says, today is the second anniversary of my brother's death. I celebrate who he was and ask for prayers and best wishes for my sister-in-law who misses him tremendously. And there's one candle we're going to light for all the joys and sorrows that aren't spoken, but are out here in our community.
one day, your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints called together for the common worship of a wrathful God, ceaselessly praying between bouts of decrying the evil of Christmas or dancing. Or maybe it was a few brave souls who answered a notice in the newspaper, curiosity piqued by the announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were the bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born. A gathering of people, humble, caring, anxious, and quirky, all at the same time, who covenanted to be with one another on the journey of life, death, and everything in between. And so it began. A faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to that central task, that human task of connecting, loving, and serving. It was just a baby, and yet it was thrust deep into the human condition, tasked to hold minds and souls, bodies and hearts along the roller derby of disease and birth, infighting and joy and Christmas pageants. Sometimes all of those at the same time. They gathered to hear the world broken open, for insightful sermons, rejuvenating music, and a community whose fierce devotion to each other's well-being rivaled that of a mama bear for her cubs. But it wasn't always like that, of course. There were trying times, and I don't just mean Phyllis and Jack, those stubborn but lovable souls who inhabit the netherworld of committee meetings. No, I mean the trying times. When the church almost split in half over the war or integration, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and the people couldn't speak about it for decades. But somehow, you were still here, still on the town common, still the church that everyone recognizes, still the ones who show up every time you're called on, still using the communion silver until you voted to sell it. New people came and they changed things. Small things, big things. Things that nobody noticed as it happened until suddenly it was hard to even recognize anything anymore. That was a hard moment, a tearful moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God, once heard loud from the pulpit, softened. Wrathful became loving. Distant became intimate. Mandatory became optional. After the war, the nursery and RE classrooms were overflowing. Each baby dedicated reminded the church of the incredible beauty of life and the gift that this community, all huddled around baby, would bestow upon this child. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about tie-dye or chalices, sermon discussions, or social justice committees. The history of the church is the history of the human enterprise, evolving in its sights and sounds, yet revolving always around its core. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, of baggage and personality. The history of your church is the launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. Each day, your church is born.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for taking that, Lorianne. Some old memories fade away so slowly, and I still vaguely remember that day in the first grade when our teacher, Mrs. Lyerly, she asked us to tell the class what we'd done on our spring break. And when my turn came, I began talking about a family trip somewhere. I don't even remember where, but I distinctly recollect that as I was speaking, I sensed that this so far predictable narrative needed some punch, some drama. And so I was inspired to sprinkle in some dashes of spicy excitement. And it worked. My classmates suddenly perked up and listened intently as I told of how near the end of our family vacation, we were suddenly attacked by wild Indians with bows and arrows. And we barely escaped with our lives. Never mind that this was long past the time when this was a real possibility. This historical anachronism didn't seem to register with my classmates. They were amazed by the story. And Mrs. Lyerly appeared to be amused. It was the only time I saw a smile crack her face that whole year. Of course, she knew that my imagination had gotten the better of me, but she never challenged my story in front of my classmates. Maybe it was because the story entertained her and it kept the class engaged. I don't know why she didn't give me a hard time, but I do know this. We love stories. We love to be engaged, entertained, enthralled by stories. Ever since ancient times when our ancestors gathered around the light of fires to tell stories, onto our present age when we are gathered around the light of our movie, computer, and TV screens. Technology has changed, people less so. We love a good story. So there you are watching some action, adventure, or comedy, or romance, and you know quite well it's make-believe, and yet you get drawn in, you suspend disbelief, and you get swept up into the narrative, and it takes you on this roller coaster ride of highs and lows and triumphs and tragedies and love and anger. And sometimes there are some villains in these dramas, and they're such villains that you even hate them. You just hate them. They're so bad. And if you saw them out in public, you'd be tempted to give them a piece of your mind. And if you did, the actors who merely played roles would be perfectly justified in asking if you were out of your mind. Because the truthful response would have to be, yes, I'm out of my mind, because I got lost in the drama and forgot to distinguish between your fictional role and reality. Sorry about that. Great job of acting, by the way. Maybe you should feel flattered that I hated you. In fact, it's not at all uncommon for good actors to play villains so well that people do hate their guts in real life. Such is the power of narrative, even ones we know aren't real. Propagandists of all political stripes and persuasions and ethical standards know all about the power of narrative, how to lull you in to putting your independent thinking mind in neutral, ignore inconvenient, contrary facts as they pull you further along into their narratives. And to keep you under their sway, propagandists implicitly understand how to make the narrative meet your needs. The need to belong with others who share your perspective, the need to find meaning and purpose, and most significantly, the need, or rather the desire, to feel justified, to feel superior to those who hearken to other narratives. And then There are the internal narratives that we tell ourselves, the ones that come from within, from our past conditionings, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are in our world. Too often those narratives that we tell ourselves, the conditioned narratives, don't lead to growth and happiness, but rather despair and despondency. Oftentimes we're our own worst enemies. But then there are the narratives that come to us from the wisdom traditions and from our Unitarian Universalist tradition that remind us of our best selves and the highest hopes and dreams of humankind. These are the kinds of narratives that can command the allegiance of our awakened hearts. There are many narratives vying for us to raise our sails to their winds, and you must choose which narrative winds you will set your sails to. Narrative is the fuel, the wind power that takes you where you go, whether it's towards heaven or hell on earth and beyond. And it can be hard to tell the difference sometimes. Sometimes people follow narratives they think are taking them to good places, and that turns out not to be the case at all. You need to have a narrative, a story that you tell yourself to even get out of bed in the morning. And if you choose to curl up into the fetal position, it's because you told yourself a narrative that took the wind out of your sails. We sail across the ocean of life by virtue of the wind power of the narratives in our sails. And depending upon your chosen narratives, the winds can take you all sorts of places. Today, ill winds are blowing Americans, that is us, in divisive and dangerous directions. These are not new winds, but they have grown in intensity thanks to the conditions wrought by political climate change. We have social media now that causes the winds to rise to near hurricane strength in these times of unique challenge and uncertainty. All too often, these windy narratives are driven by fear. Fear. How does fear manifest often? As hate, as anger and hate. So many of the narratives are blowing us in bad directions, driven by fear, anger, and hate. Narratives fueled by hate are very powerful. As the social philosopher Erich Hoffer noted, he said, hatred is the most accessible and comprehensive of all unifying agents. Mass movements can rise and spread without a belief in a God, but never without a belief in a devil. I know how these winds blow, because in years past I got caught up in them. As I raised my sails to the political ideas and ideals, called them liberal, progressive ones, that resonate and still resonated with me. And yet, as time wore on and this journey continued, the winds blew more chilly and shrill, and the distance between those in my chosen armada and those we at first disdained and then despised and finally demonized, the distance grew ever greater. Amongst us, a judgmental mindset became the norm, and I began to notice that there was less tolerance for dissenting views and that compassion was no longer in the mix, and humor was mostly laughing at the woeful ignorance and folly of those on the other side. It had a cruel edge to it. It has a cruel edge to it. A lot of humor has a cruel edge to it. Pay attention to the humor. It's belittling other people. Because of those others, they held contrary beliefs, mostly by virtue of being shaped by their own socio-cultural contexts. Whole swaths of the American public get labeled, demonized, dismissed, even as the same thing happens in the opposite political direction, such that the level of mutual hostility in our country has reached dangerously high toxic levels. It feels like we're just like a spark away from a big national dumpster fire. Polls disturbingly, show that tolerance for violence as a tool of political expression is on the rise, both on the right and on the left. Here's the hard part for me, distressingly. Our leadership at the Unitarian Universalist Association, and we are a member of the organization, I don't think they have risen above the divisive turmoil or provided us with a loftier spiritual model. Rather than reminding us that we are part of a universal faith tradition that has sublime, unifying spiritual ideals that are so wonderfully expressed in our principles and purposes, which you have on the back of your order of service, such sublime ideals, our national leaders are insisting that we function more as a politically tribalistic pseudo-religion, just another ideological functionary within the vast political polarization industrial complex. Furthermore, the leaders of our association countenance the use of illiberal and intolerant means to enforce conformity, as you can see at our General Assemblies, where it takes a singular act of courage to publicly cast a dissenting vote. This is nothing new. Organized religion of all stripes often ends up producing fundamentalists and fanatics who fall far short of the wisdom traditions they purport to embody. You have Buddhist and Hindu and Christian and Jewish fundamentalists in the world, and now we have Unitarian Universalist fundamentalists. This is a serious allegation, and I don't make it lightly. I make it heavily, with a heavy heart, because we should expect so much more from our leadership. There is so much pertinent wisdom. The narratives of our dual American traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism, they can create such ennobling and helpful narratives. And our leaders say we should trash that. That's all bad. Our tradition is no longer any good. Today, more than ever, it strikes me that the role of religious community, wherever they find themselves on the political spectrum, is to help us rise above the narratives that lead us to places of greed and hatred and delusion. There are narratives that lead us to those places of greed and hatred and delusion. And the Buddhist tradition calls these the three poisons. The three poisons that affect us all in one way or another. And if we listen to the narratives that are poisonous, that's what we become. The great unholy temptation proffered by culture war narratives, coming from the right and the left, is that they facilitate the perversely gratifying but unhealthy impulse to indulge in self-righteous indignation. They're bad. I always get nervous when I'm seeing all the bad stuff in the world out there and I'm not looking within myself. That always makes me a little nervous. When there is no humility, and when there is just outrage and pointing at the sins and the evils of the world out there instead of also looking within yourself, that's not a spiritually mature way to go. That kind of vision, that outrage, that self-righteous indignation, it narrows your vision such that you become blinded to the humanity of those who follow different narratives. We do. We fail to see the humanity of those who think and believe differently. Our chosen narratives, the narratives that guide our lives day by day, have momentous consequences. They are so momentous that the historical Buddha expressed this in his first public discourse, known as the Dhammapada. And in the opening verses, the Buddha starkly reminded his listeners that we are shaped for good or ill depending upon which narratives you embrace in your mind. The narratives to which you habitually raise your sails determine where you go and who you become. And narratives that promote hate and ill will and a sense of victimhood and outrage only lead to sorrow. Narratives that steer us away from this, that remind us of our common humanity, that fill out our sails with compassion and gratitude. These are the winds of grace. The Hindu sage Ramakrishna once noted that the winds of grace are always blowing. You only have to raise your sail. Yet I know that other winds are blowing as well. And a person must learn to navigate with the wisdom to discern which are the winds that blow toward the tumultuous seas of hate and anger, which shipwreck many souls, and which are the winds that lead to the great seas of love and tranquility beyond all the turmoil and sirens of this world. We should have closed the windows before the sermon. It's okay. We'll know next Sunday. Would you join me in a meditation? As we live day by day, we tell ourselves stories from moment to moment. Stories that make us love, stories that can make us angry, stories that can fill our hearts with fear, or stories that can fill our hearts with courage. We tell ourselves stories. And the stories we believe and hearken to determine where we go. And in this place, we raise our sails to the winds of grace together as we drift forward together across the years, across the generations. We are headed to a better place, little by little. And so let us continue our journeys, each one of us, remembering that the narratives we choose will take us where we need to go if we choose wisely. May we do so. Amen.
The offering is a tangible symbol of our commitment to this community, to our higher ideals, to each other, and to our free faith. Our Share the Plate partner for September is the Home and Youth Resource Center, who provide a safe and supportive environment where at-risk and homeless youth have their immediate needs met and a positive opportunity to connect with their community. As always, we accept donations to the Mary and Poke Food Share in the wagon that is coming to the front of the sanctuary. Donations may be made during the passing of the baskets or by logging on to uusalem.org and following the prompts. This morning's offering will be now gratefully received.
I just want to thank you, John, and Lorianne, and the choir. It's so good to have a choir back. Man, we've been out without having a regular choir for so long, and I'm really glad to see things coming back. So after the service today, we have a chocolate cake and a vanilla cake, and they're big cakes, and they say, "We love you, Joe Bateman. You are our mighty oak." And we want you to all join us after the service for that. And Don Wolf has an announcement, and I'm going to have him come. As he walks up, I'm going to give another announcement. Next Sunday is our Animal Blessing Sunday, so if you want to send in a photo of an animal, we'll project it and we'll bless it. Or if you're brave and your animal behaves themselves, bring your animal here, and we'll bless them. We're going to have an animal blessing service in the Sunday service, and it's always a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. So please do come to us next week. The following Sunday, in the end of the month, there's another announcement, but I'm going to stand aside for that one because Don Wolf has an important announcement about today. So come on and tell us what's happening, Don.
Today it is. For those of you who signed up for today's Finding Our Future event, we begin at noon. For those of you who didn't sign up for the event, the rest of us begin at noon. I don't mean to be inhospitable, especially since social is one of the most important things in our community, but we need the space at noon. Thank you much.
So we'll have plenty of time to congratulate you, Joe. And I'm sorry, I tricked you a little bit. I said I was doing a historical research project, and I just needed to get a little more information about you for this. And I apologize for tricking you, but we love you, and we wanted to make sure that you knew that we loved you. So you can keep up with the news of the community by getting on our website and looking at hot topics, and they'll keep you up to date with all the various programs and activities coming up. I will mention that we are going to be having a men's retreat on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the 14th, 15th, and 16th of October, and would love to have you join us for that retreat. If you are interested, just come talk to me, and I can get you signed up. And it's not very expensive, but if cost is a factor, that's fine. We can still accommodate you. So hope you'll join us for that. I think I've bent your ear enough with the announcements. We're good.
And Reverend Rick is bringing forward the Social Justice Lantern. And we light this each week from our community chalice as a symbol of taking the light and warmth of this community out into the community. Now we must extinguish the flames of our chalices, but I pray the words we have heard and spoken here today have inspired, that the flame in your heart kindles joy in others. May it be so.
Our closing hymn, number 83 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body and or spirit. Winds be still.
One
illuminate our inward view. Help us to see with clarity. Thy rock and true song, we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony.
Please remain standing, and if you are comfortable, please join hands with those around you and join me in saying our closing words. May faith